Welcome to Explorations. Today we're talking with Paul Costello, the founder and director of Storywise.com and the Center for Narrative Studies. Since 1995, Paul has been researching new ways to unleash the power of story and apply it to some of the most challenging issues of our time. In this third of a five-part interview, Paul discusses what he terms story maps and how he's learned to use deliberate story design in every endeavor to ensure greater success. So let's get to it. You've been playing with this concept of story maps and narrative design. Talk a little bit about that, because I think it's fascinating, and I think that for people listening to this interview, it will be illuminating for them in their thinking.
Well, I have to say that, the Irish program was like a living laboratory for us, and so was the South African program, kicking that off, and then the Israel-Palestine one. I know that there's a certain philosophy about people learning from their success, but I've learned most from my failures. I kind of like failing in the respect of, maybe it's because I'm Irish too, but there's something about, Thomas Edison trying to invent the light bulb, and like, that doesn't work. Well, at least I know that doesn't work. Or to me, that self-critical reflection around Israel-Palestine, particularly when there's so much wisdom out there, but it's so much wisdom that's been tried. If so many good programs and good ideas of change and mediation have been happening, how things are getting worse. There's a famous book by James Hillman. We've had 100 years of psychotherapy and the world is getting worse. Like, what is that? If you're treating the patient with a medicine that's supposed to cure them and they're getting worse, then you probably should stop and take a look at what the medicine is. So I think the timing thing for me is like, where do you come into the story? You've got a visitor.
You have a visitor. Let me see if I can get rid of my little visitor. Out you go. Out you go. Out you go. He says he doesn't like you. Sorry.
It's all right. No, I think part of it is then, say, with Israel-Palestine, as distinct from Ireland, where you enter a story, and then what is a beginning and a middle and an end, and just suddenly thinking, that's the way we think in stories. That's the way screenplays are written: beginning, middle, and end, the setup, the narrative arc. We talk about it. And then to understand that that's probably the way our brains are sort of wired, in a way, the way language shapes us. And then to be aware. And so, like, now when I'm running my AmeriCorps program, my young people here who work in the school system, they've got a year of service. And I'm thinking, like, I'm interested in their stories, yes, and I'll teach them how to tell better stories. But actually, I want to get underneath that. I want to say, if my outcome is in 20 years' time, I want them to be telling stories about their service still to their kids and their grandkids. Then if I want the outcome to be a story, then I should design it as a story. So the 12-month program should be designed as a story. It should have a sequence. It should have, what do you do in the beginning? What do you do in the middle? What do you do in the end? And come up with a sort of a narratively intelligent system of how you sequence the experiences. I used to find that with the Irish program. When do you go to New York? We used to have a wonderful weekend in New York. Where do you go? It's a little experiment. You have 8 weeks and we're going to go to New York. So tell me, when do you go to New York with the kids? Do you go at the beginning? Do you go at the middle? Or do you go at the end? If you have a choice, where you put that weekend. And, in structuring that program, you think like, okay, they come out here middle of June. Their honeymoon is for 3 weeks, so you don't have to do too much. It's all new. They're fresh. It's exciting. The beginning is a creative energy zone, and then you think, well, the middle. What will carry the middle? Because the middle is where we get lost.
I apologize. I had to chase him upstairs.
No, that's all right.
So Yeah, pick up. So the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a practical problem of designing a program, whether it's an American program or the Irish program. You say like, I got to be thinking, if I want a story to come out of the end of the experience and a shared story between enemies, I've got to design it as a story at the front end, at the back end sort of thing. I want a Mercedes car to come out of the factory. Then how am I engineering it inside the factory? What materials am I using? And what's the sequence? So it's like, I've got 8 weeks of an Irish program. So I start to think of beginning, middle, and end as zones of energy and possibility. That energy is a condition of position. Beginning is where you've got creative energy, incredible. Middle is where it gets complicated and confusing. So be careful, because everyone's going to get lost in the middle. And then at the end, it's completion. It's completion. So with that framework, then I design my program or my AmeriCorps program, or I say to people, I could design a conference like that. I could design a wedding like that. A Broadway hit is designed like that. So, which meant that the logic of it was, first 2 weeks in America, they're excited. So the fresh energy, it's honeymoon. Then they get 4th of July. That's another big boost. But come middle of July, it's hot. It's really hot. They're tired and they're getting ratty. That's when you take them to New York. So that that's going to dip in the middle. You just know it psychologically, the energy. So what are you going to do to recalibrate and remoralize these kids so that last week is completion, celebration. So that's a deliberate exercise of principles of narrative design, which means that I think, and I saw it work, that one of the classes, each year of like every 4th of July, I would write letters to all the alums and say, remember what you were doing on the 4th of July. Remember that on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Catholic and Protestant, Israeli and Palestinian, black, white, and colored South Africans, you were all on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and you were all watching the fireworks, and you were all celebrating the American story of possibility. So remember that and connect with your friends again. And they got into that. It became a ritual then. Every year, there was a way that I would deliberately revive that story, and then they would do it themselves. They would do it automatically themselves. Thanksgiving and 4th of July, they'd know we've got to connect. We've got to step back into that American shared story. But again, did that happen by chance? No, it's very deliberate. Very deliberate as a piece of design, that what feeds memory, the intensity of the experience, the emotion, the who you're with, all the issues. You did it. You wrote some chapters on memory. You did some really big. You were looking at the research in memory as to what creates the enduring memory. And my thesis is, if you create an enduring memory, you create a resource for meaning making that goes way beyond the actual moment. You can look back on that and it can get even more significant. Like a couple look back on the day that they first met, and as they marry and have kids and shared experience, that moment when they met in the bar after the Super Bowl, like it just grows and grows and grows and grows. But they have to remember it. If you don't remember it, you can't make meaning out of it.
Yeah. It strikes me that this concept of story maps has so much applicability to so many things, whether you're in business or whether you're looking at your own life.
Right. Yeah.
Considering, so where am I on the map right here? And what's the terrain look like forward, and what tools, what do I need to bring with me on that part of the journey?
Right.
I love going backpack. We were up hiking a couple springs ago, and it's at the beginning of the Appalachian Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, you see these guys heading out for this 3 or 4 month walk, and man, they're loaded down. And many of them are novices.
Right.
And you start hearing stories like they're within about 5 miles they're shedding stuff. It's like, "Well, I don't need all these pots,
Right.
and these 3 pairs of shoes, forget it, because it's heavy, So and because they begin to see as they meet the road their demands that the journey puts on us.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if we understand what the map is, we'll be better prepared, I think.
No, I know that Senec's great book called Start with Why, and then is it Daniel Pink or something? He has another one. It's like start with when, and I say like no, start with where. I mean, because starting with why is still aware. Like it means start. It means it's a position. It's like I want to say who you are is where you are, and where you are in your life cycle, where you are in that story, multiple stories, and each your position in the story has different feelings about it. And it's kind of like, when my previous life of working with couples and marriage stuff, and you say realize a lot of the times I think couples break up because they think they're in different stories, but they're not. They're in the same story, but they're in a different place. The wife is in it, the husband is retired, or the wife is past menopause. They're in the same story, but they've lost their way, they've lost their place, they don't know where they are, or they're in two different places in the same story. So that means they're generating two different sorts of energy. And if you don't know that, then you just think like we're breaking up. No, you're not breaking up at all. You're just in two different places, because energy is a condition of position, and position shapes possibility. So if you're 65 and she's 65, but you're in different places, like, okay, I think you map that. You map that, and you suddenly can I mean, Michael White's work was about externalizing the story. And it's like, get out of the story and have a look at it and
Right.
just understand that it's not you. It's not you. It's, this is how stories unfold and how the energy fields are created. I think I've written a lot about it, but I haven't published much about it. But I use it all the time.
Hmm. It just seems like such an invaluable concept, because if you say, "Oh, we're in two different places, what can we create given those circumstances
Right,
together?"
right,
That becomes an interesting enterprise,
right,
instead of like, "Well, we just need to go off on our merry ways." For
right,
example. Yeah.
right.